The grand corridors of Buckingham Palace had always echoed with history, but on this particular winter evening, they seemed to whisper something darker, an echo of betrayal, a rustle of invisible King Charles III, once a figure who dreamed of modernizing the monarchy, now sat slumped in the ornate chair of his pride. His hands trembled as he leafed through a document that should have been his ultimate act of authority, the royal will. But this was not his will, it was Camilla's masterpiece. The palace had been buzzing for weeks about secret meetings held behind. Charles had been excluded from some of them, allegedly due to his frail health. Doctors whispered about his declining condition, courtiers avoided his gaze, and Camilla, her laughter, once soft and private, now rang through the halls with the confidence of someone who held the keys. The document in his hands was damning, provisions that stripped Prince William of certain inheritances, reallocated assets to mysterious trusts, and, most shockingly, placed Harry, the prodigal son, in a position of. Charles' pen had never touched this paper, yet his signature gleamed at the bottom, as if his own hand had. Your Majesty, the nation must not see weakness. Camilla's voice. She had placed her manicured hand on his shoulder, the same hand that now, he suspected, had guided every clause of the monarchy must adapt. I'm only doing what you no longer can. Charles felt the weight of those. He had fought his entire life to prove he was more than a waiting prince, more than the scandal of his youth, more than the shadow. But now, as king, he found himself powerless, his reign undermined not by Parliament, not by the people, but by the woman. That night, a storm raged outside the palace. Inside, the king sat alone as lightning illuminated the ancient portraits of rulers past, strong men and women who had faced wars. None of them, he thought bitterly, had been reduced. Reports had already begun leaking to the press, rumors of a new direction for the monarchy, whispers of Camilla's secret influence, and a leaked snippet of the will itself. The headlines were merciless. Is the king still in control? Camilla's crown, has the queen consort become queen? Prince William stormed into the study 2 nights later, his face pale with fury. Father, tell me this isn't true, tell me you didn't sign this. Charles opened his mouth, but his silence was the only confession William needed. She's tearing this family apart, William spat, before leaving with the slam of. Harry, on the other hand, remained in California, watching the chaos unfold with a peculiar mixture of triumph and. Meghan urged him to seize the opportunity, to return and claim what was, but even he knew that accepting this poisoned gift would ignite a war that no. As weeks turned to months, Charles' health continued to wane. Public appearances grew rarer, his speeches more. Every time he addressed the nation, Camilla stood a step closer to the microphone, a step closer to. Inside the palace, whispers turned to open defiance. Staff began referring to her as the true. Documents were no longer sent for the king's review. Charles, once a man who had survived decades of waiting, was now waiting again, waiting for the inevitable moment when history would remember him not as a reformer or even as a scandalous prince, but as the king who watched his crown slip away. In the dead of night, he sometimes wandered the halls, his slippers. In those moments, he would pass the locked archive room, where the original draft of his true will, one that favored both his sons equally, one that preserved the monarchy's fragile unity, that document would never see the light of day. Camilla had mastered the art of subtlety, a suggestion here, a reshuffling of advisors there, a gentle insistence that the king. Each step, each signature taken in his name, was another threat. He was the monarch, but she was the puppeteer. The world. Commonwealth nations whispered of leaving. Parliament grew restless. And in the pubs of London, the question was no longer how long will Charles reign? But has he already? The final act came during the Spring Jubilee, a celebration meant to. The king appeared on the balcony, pale and drawn, while Camilla waited. The crowd's cheers were lukewarm, confused, divided. And when Charles raised his hand to speak, Camilla stepped forward, her voice smooth and commanding, delivered. In that moment, under the grey English sky, Charles realized the truth. His reign had ended long before his crown would. History would remember him not for his reforms, nor for his resilience. And somewhere deep in the palace, the secret will, the one that had started it all, remained locked away, its ink still fresh, its